What's up, y'all? It's Cousin Chet. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. I am here with, of course, Dill. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you to everybody that has clicked that follow button, subscribe button, up to like 44 subscribers on the Tube of You. And I've been active on Twitter recently. Don't forget Instagram. And I do have my Facebook up, so you can follow that. Dill, do you want to share any of your handles? All right.
Hey, no works.
So thank you to everybody. Thank you for your support. The best way to support us right now is simply to give us some algorithm love, a little bit of liking, a little bit of subscribing, a little bit of sharing, a little bit of commenting. Goes a long way. Help us get up to like 50 on YouTube. You know what I mean? Help us out.
Subscribe to Honky
Tube. So today we are. I'm really enthralled with the Twitter Elon Musk situation. I feel like it's historical. I really do feel that that Elon has offered a counterbalance to include all the voices of the other 50%. They're creating some platforms like Rumble and situations like that where people can freely express themselves and share their opinions. But I feel that the censorship that has occurred in the last 3 to 4 years is dystopian. It reminds me of the Soviet Union that when I was in high school I was taught was bad, and it was everything that we didn't want. And I do feel that there is some altruistic motive of Elon to correct that balance. I think he has a lot of other motives, but I think that to correct that balance.
You ever seen Conan the Barbarian?
Yeah.
You remember that scene where Conan's in there and he's meeting the sorcerer, and I don't remember what happens all in the scene, but it's like basically you kind of get the impression like Conan's here, he's his prisoner, and it's like maybe he tries to flex on the sorcerer somehow a little bit. He's all pissed off. He's like, I fucking hate this guy. And the sorcerer like takes one look at him and just gives a little gesture to somebody standing at the top. And without a word, he just gives a little thumbs up, thumbs down. And one of his servants just throws themselves off the building and splats right on the ground in front of him. And then he turns around and looks at the barbarian and says, that's what power is.
Wow, I've seen that in another movie. But yeah.
Elon Musk.
Somebody totally stole that and put it in another movie. I can't think of what.
When you say this is historic, this is Elon basically. Elon's basically at the point in the movie where Conan makes it back to the sorcerer, and the sorcerer's basically got him in a mind game. He's kind of like playing on he's seeded this idea of, you know what, you've suffered and you've struggled, but in the end, I'm the one who put you on this journey. I'm the one who's seeded the greatness that you've developed on your way to get here. Don't you see how you kind of owe me? Don't you kind of see how at the end of the day, this is daddy? And he's playing these mind games with Conan, and Elon's kind of reached the point where he kind of snaps himself out of the philosophical daydream that this puppet master is weaving. And all he has to do is just decide to whip out the sword, cut the guy's head off. The end.
Yeah.
That ain't that simple.
No, it's not.
We ain't this isn't a schlocky 80s movie.
No, and that wizard is very, very powerful, and there's more than one.
And it's and the fantasy in it is to think you can boil the whole apparatus down to this one James Earl Jones like figure. Like, it's not one person.
No.
If it was one person, the game would be a lot more straightforward. But Elon Musk pulling those Twitter files and Elon Musk scrubbing the FBI plants out of Twitter, and
If he's got them all.
probably not. But even the point is, like, the sword has been drawn.
Yeah. And I think the sword was drawn before that. I wonder how much of Elon's motivations are because they've been trying to squeeze him out. You know, they didn't invite him to the electric car thing, and I mentioned this the other day. So, you know, I think that there's more going on there. I think that the Democratic Party has not been a super fan of Elon. He's either not signed the contract, right? He hasn't sold his soul. He's too much of a free thinker. That's what's wrong with that's what they don't like about Elon, is that they can't use him for their social engineering, right? And he's a big, and even now he's even a bigger voice, right? I mean, this guy went on Joe Rogan and smoked a joint. This guy went on Saturday Night Live and just showed himself to be who he is, right? And did you see that, Elon, on Saturday Night Live?
I couldn't watch it all.
Really? So I didn't watch the whole thing either. I just watched YouTube clips, honestly, because, you know, they break down the little...
I respected the cojones to go up there and eat a prop onion in a Wario costume.
I don't think he ate it.
Oh, yeah, but
yeah, it was supposed to be garlic.
no, either way, I admire the cojones, but the
Yeah.
whole time I was like,
Well,
dude,
it's well known that you can use Saturday Night Live
yeah,
to be self-deprecating and to make fun of things around, to make fun of yourself,
yeah.
and to make fun of the
That's what
public
I-
perception
that's
of you,
what I respect.
right? And he
As far as comedy goes, it was a
well,
strange miscalculation for Elon, I thought.
I thought it was funny just because he's so quirky. I mean, when you see him moving, like, and you know, and when he kind of says in the monologue, he's like, "I'm the first person with Asperger's," you know, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
you know, I thought you were the smartest guy on the planet. Didn't realize it was Asperger's. I maybe could have known that, but
Explains a few things.
But I have to say that watching him live and on standing up and moving around, you really got to see how kind of awkward he is. You know what I mean? Like, his movements they're twitchy, they're Tourette-ical in
Yeah.
some senses. And I didn't notice that, like, when I saw him on Rogan. And when I've seen him on other podcasts, he's sitting down. You know, you see it a little bit in his head movements, but
Well, SNL's a big social.
and I'm not Elon is Elon, right? And I think that's part of what they don't like, is that he is an individual, free-thinking human
Yeah.
that shows us that we also can be, right? Because the proverbial they, want us all just to kind of be in line. They want us easy managed. They want to be able to manage easily. So, with that being said. So Elon buys Twitter, and to me, it's the biggest news story going on right now. Yet, the corporate state-run media machine, which is what I'm calling it right now, is kind of silence on it. I mean, all these organizations used to like have the little tweet bird everywhere, right? They were reading tweets, sharing tweets. They gave Twitter more airtime, more free commercial time.
Because they could afford a check mark.
It wasn't even that. I think it was because they wanted to have...
Well,
I think that one thing about free speech is, and one thing that the people who want to circumnavigate the Constitution, they circumnavigate it through corporations. Because as a corporation, you don't have to give free speech.
Yeah.
You don't, it can, look, if you want to create a completely left liberal social media site that does nothing but be an echo chamber. And this goes for the right as well. If you want to create your own echo chamber and bubble social media site, you're allowed, right?
People use corporations like an umbrella.
They do.
It's an umbrella stretched. It's an umbrella stitched out of lawyers.
But the weird thing about the internet, this is a new technology that these spaces are being used as public forums, right?
Yeah.
We're being told it is a public forum. You know, Jack at Jack says, you know, on an interview with Matt Lauer, you know, this is a place where everybody can come and speak, and you have the freedom to block people you want to block. Don't listen to who you want to listen to, not listen to who you don't want to listen to. To me, that's how Twitter, Facebook, I felt like, you know, YouTube in the beginning, they had that. And I think that the media, you know, these 5 media companies that are right now the corporate state,
And then came the
Media.
railroads.
you know, I think that they saw a way to manipulate the public discourse, and they did. Effectively, they did. When Facebook, Google, Twitter all decided that they were going to buy and toe the left, the liberal, I hate to call them liberal because I feel like I'm liberal, but basically the blue team, when they said, you know what, we're on blue team. We're definitely not Trump team, right? And I think that they saw Twitter as a way to manipulate that public discourse. I think they saw social media as a way to manipulate that public discourse. It's a long way of saying that Elon opening up now, there's a platform where the discourse can go both ways. See, that's what we don't have. We don't have the middle ground. We've got red team, blue team, and I'm jumping way ahead now.
Yeah.
But
That's fine.
I really think that we've got red team, blue team, and it's like, you know, the blue team's basically saying who's on which team, you know. The blue team's like, these people are on our team, these people are on our team. If you believe this, if you do this, if you basically, it's almost damn near if you trust the government, which is weird.
It's just such a dead framework.
Yeah.
Democrat, Republican, are you red or are you blue? And it's like, on the one hand, it's like there's this bicameral notion to the Constitution of, not the Constitution, but in the framework of the founding of the United States, there's this implicit bicameral notion of, well, you need two sides. Like, this is how philosophy is done. It's done in dialects. There's the thesis and there's the antithesis. There's the right, there's the left, there's the up, there's the down. And then you have to negotiate where you want to be between two positions. But what you said about the corporations being able to basically lobby and super PAC together in order to essentially buy their own pieces of the pie, like, people don't see it, but it's like, if people see it, I don't hear them talking about it all that much, but it's like, this binary is used to ping pong. Everybody in the middle is just getting knocked around in the middle between these two ping pong paddles. One's red, one's blue, and it's literally that simple. Like, that's as simple as I can make it. It's
Well, you don't hear them, and the reason you don't hear them is because they know that everything's a fucking argument.
Yeah.
You know.
And I can't even. I think it's Jack Posobiec. Yeah, he was the guy who's saying, if you ever go to one of these congressional hearings, or if you're ever sitting in on one of these, like, meetings of the House, it's like they stand up there, they make this big show, they blow this big bluster at each other about, well, the Democrats are doing this, and the Democrats go up, the Republicans are doing this, and it doesn't make sense. They'll argue about abortion. They'll argue about the economy. They'll argue about critical race theory or some nonsense, and then
Doesn't matter what
as
they're
soon as they get behind the cameras, they're high-fiving each other and shaking their hands.
And
It's
just a show. Yeah,
It's theater.
I feel the same way about all these congressional hearings. I'm like, it's just show. What's ever really done? You know what I mean? It's all political stunting and political manipulation to give the media fodder. You know, no, it really is. You know, and it brings up something for me that, you know, humans are genetically disposed to look at and pay attention to things that are wrong. Right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, we're hunter gatherers and we're living in our little hut, you know, collecting our nuts and berries, and you know what I mean? As long as everything looks cool, we're like cool, right? But if something looks a little off, we're like, oh, I noticed that, right? Because that could be an animal, that could be danger. And we don't, in our current political media climate, and that's social media and what do you call the other media? The state-run media, the corporate media. They've got us all like doing that. So I said all that to ask you this. Who do you see in the current government, national government, that you feel is like a straight shooter?
In the government?
That is just not, like, yeah, who do you feel is like not corrupt?
I don't know that much about her. I've only seen a few scant interviews. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is pretty authentic. And I say that because
And maybe that's a better question, is who is authentic? Because I think it's hard, you know, corrupt could be a pretty subjective way of looking at things. Who's authentic?
maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene.
I don't know if I like that question now either. Sorry, because what I'm really trying to say, like, I think the straight shooter is what I said. What I said originally, and
Who's standing in the middle?
yeah,
with
who's standing in the
everybody
middle?
else?
Who's like not just giving me propaganda, right? Who's not just playing blue? Who's not playing blue team, red team politics?
Yeah, see, I don't know as that isn't Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think she's an authentic person who's inherited the red politics. Like she's born and raised conservative, and see that's the thing that's so impotent about conservatism right now for me. That's what's so impotent about Republicans to me, is it's like they're like, yeah, maybe they Republican Party tends to err a little more on the side of authenticity. Maybe I can find a Marjorie Taylor Greene or a Carrie Lake, but because the Democrats have excised all of the Tulsi Gabbards out of their party. Incidentally, all I'm talking about is women right now, but they, like, when I say authentic, it's like, and then again, what those three women have in common is they weren't able to get excised just merely through the weapon of identity politics. It's like, we're women, we're conservative women, not necessarily so much for Tulsi Gabbard, but out of anybody, I kind of felt like Tulsi Gabbard was the one person who was a politician in Congress, actually like meeting people in the middle, like actually concerned about the American populace.
You know, I want to say I think is a bad question, because if they're Democrats or Republicans, they've already kind of, you know, they're playing the politic game, right? I think,
Well, that's
you
the
know,
nature of
my allusion to propaganda and it's at a level, but I'm glad you mentioned Tulsi, because she's an example of what I was really looking for, right? Is these people that are tired of this party politics. This we're not allowed to work across the aisle, and look, both of them are guilty. we've had Democrats that want to stifle Republican presidents. We've had Republicans that want to stifle Democratic presidents. Watching what the Republicans did to Obama, and they both, to me, this is the Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi childish fucking game.
And that's the thing that's so impotent about Republicans specifically is it's like Donald Trump coming along and saying, "We're just gonna build the wall. Don't give a fuck. We're just gonna make it. Just gonna build it." Like that was the closest thing a Republicans had to a creative idea, maybe ever.
Well,
And there's no creativity.
but right, I hear you. But kind of what I was going towards is like, they've created this red team, blue team situation. And so now we talk about a subject like the wall and it becomes polarizing. Like everything becomes polarizing. So for those of us that are stuck in the middle, right, that are like, in a way, there's some good ideas here. And maybe we should look at some real comprehensive ways to deal with immigration. Like, I'm sorry, we've been kicking this can down the road for a couple decades now. Mitch McConnell and Nancy have been around all this time. Why is this still an issue? You know what I mean? Why is this still an issue? Why is it at the point where we're having I think I heard a quote like up to like 7,000 people a day coming in illegally. So my point is that you say you mentioned that it's not a good framework.
No.
But the media has us, and we have ourselves polarized, right? Because you look at like Elton John, who came on to Twitter and was like, you know what? I'm not going to be on Twitter anymore because it's allowing speech that I don't want to hear and that I don't support. And that's his right. I love Elton John. I have nothing against Elton John. If Elton John does not want to listen to Twitter and feels like, he's sensitive to that energy,
You're not obligated to be there.
you're not exactly like, but I think it represents this thing, this bubbling that we're doing where we don't have people in the middle because one team has decided you're on that team,
And that's the irony of Elon dumping all the Twitter files is it's like, okay, Twitter was originally pitched. I kind of err on the side of I think Jack Dorsey was authentic in his intentions for Twitter. I think he desired it to be sort of a forum where people could come meet in the middle, that you could establish like this sort of dialect on a global scale. And then he gets kind of forced out. But that's the thing is, then it was like all these hooks started getting stuck into it through the Twitter corporation, through the little machinations of the executives.
Well, the other people said, hey, we're going to build you up, right?
Yeah.
We're going to make something out of you.
Yeah. And now Elon is, what I see right now is Elon's trying to preserve that middle ground. He's trying to preserve the forum.
I want to go back. You mentioned this dialectic, the bipolarity, and part of a resolution, I think, is to change the way that we think about things. We don't have to think about things as black and white. We don't have to think about it as one side or the other. We can think about it as a spectrum. Because the truth is everything is a spectrum. If we take issues like abortion, there's a spectrum of ideas that people have on what would be the best and most proper way to deal with that issue, to manage that issue, right? Because it's simply something that it has to be managed. In some way, shape, form, or fashion, it has to be managed. We could have just completely open borders and we would have chaos and we would have anarchy, and I don't think that's the answer. But when it comes to abortion, I think there are definitely people that are way over here on the spectrum, and there are definitely people way over here on the spectrum. There is no space for the middle. for the discourse of, I feel this way and I feel that way, and you say I feel this way and I feel that way, and then we come to a reasonable compromise, right? But the problem is we've got like 10% way on the total polar side, this side, and we've got another 10% over here.
At the at minimum, because I am pretty like I'm not like proselytizing about. I'm not evangelical about it, but I am pretty firmly pro-life. Now, let's say, even if you're not, let's say you're very left-wing about it, you would like to think...
I'm pro-choice.
Yeah, I would imagine, but... I would imagine that at the very least, at the bare minimum...
Hold on. I'm pro-choice only because there's two choices, pro-life or pro-choice, right? So, but I don't want to get into an abortion debate.
I'm not doing that. I'm saying,
but I want to clarify that because I'm talking about there being a spectrum, I'm talking. That's abortion's a really good example of I'm pro-life, and if you're not pro-life, then you're pro-choice. There's only two choices.
Go ahead. Not politicizing
My bad.
Conversation.
Go ahead.
No, what I was going to say is at the very least, you and I can find the common ground to agree. Okay, once the baby's born, it's hands off.
Yeah.
Once the baby's out of the womb, once it's crying openly where everyone can hear it, there's no debate.
I would agree with that.
I was in college. I was a sophomore in college. First time I heard somebody say, "No, it's still mother's right to choose. Mother still gets to make that choice."
Yeah, I think that's very extreme.
I think there's something almost insane to me about that, because it's uncompromised. And like, I'm not trying to politicize it. I'm not trying to blame one side or the other here. That's not the point. But what you're saying is, yeah, it is reached that extreme where it's like everybody's more concerned with my team winning the game than they are about, okay, what's the game we're actually playing?
Yeah. It is more about winning. Yeah, it's like when you're in an argument with somebody and you're not having an argument to find resolution, you're arguing to be right.
Yeah. You're winning
and it doesn't matter if you're right or not. You just want to win the argument.
Yeah, you're not even paying attention to the game you're playing. You're just trying to rig all the rules so that inevitably you can always just say, well, I won.
Well, and hey, we need people that are like staunch and say, you know what, I'm going to fight. I'm this extreme and I want to fight for it. That's fine. But you don't get to block the whole process of compromise in the government, right? To me, especially when you look at our current politics, how either party can claim that they have a mandate because they were elected is beyond me. You literally have a 50-50 split in a lot of states and in and definitely in the country. I mean, you may lean a little bit this way or that way, but it's pretty much a 50-50 split, bro. Like, really. So to me, when the Democrats or the Republicans, and they come in and are like, well, we got voted in, so that means we got to ramrod our shit through. And then the next 4 years, the other people come in, they're like, we're going to cancel that and ramrod our shit through. No, that's not what creates the stability that created the United States as a world dominant power. One of the reasons why we're losing right now on the global stage is because we have no stability. We are very unstable right now. Definitely the most unstable we've been, I'd say, probably since before the world wars. I don't know. I can't really speak to that. My point is, though, and abortion is a good example. I get it, right? There are people that fervently, religiously feel that they are a child of God who is put here to save the unborn child. And I get that there are people who live and have had experiences that make them just as passionately staunch that abortion should be legal and should be up to the woman to decide. To me, I feel like it's a spectrum. When we're talking about political things like this, it's not one way or the other. The government's responsibility is to find the middle ground that is based on the constitutional rights of the individual to pursue a life, liberty, and happiness, right? And I don't agree with people that want to use abortion as birth control. I think if a young woman comes to me for counsel and says, should I have this baby? I would say, please do. But be prepared for this life that you're about to lead. I also would support her emotionally if she decided that she wanted to abort the baby, especially in the first couple months. That's just me. That's where I have my line. Anyway, I don't want to get into that, but my point is there's a spectrum, right? And I feel like there's a lot of people that belong in the kind of middle of the spectrum. But the extreme voices are the loudest. Why? Because they're the ones that entertain us. They're the ones that get our attention, right? They're the ones that are going to get the most retweets and the most fucking comments, likes, right? That's sensationalized, and people love to, with clickbait, right? It's clickbait. If I say that a woman should have a right to choose if a born child within 3 days of birth, she should still have that right to murder it. No, I hold on, what was that? Sometimes I think that's just clickbait. That's somebody on campus just trying to pull your strings because they know you're.
Well, and
view.
Well, and I'm trying to think about how to put that. And look, I have, I kind of made up my mind. I kind of made up my mind that I was. I'll just say this real quick. Funny enough, I find that I'm pro-life for a very self-centered reason. And that's because the one time, I've said it before, I grew up very conservative Christian, very fundamentalist. But by the time I was off to college, I was like, all right, I'm not going to hold any bars in my own brain. I'm going to question anything and everything.
Question everything.
I reserve the right to change my
hashtag question
mind.
Everything. It's going to be one of our hashtags.
Yeah. Hashtag everything.
I actually are sorry to interrupt you.
No.
Hashtag free thinkers, hashtag question everything. Free thinkers, question everything. Go ahead.
Well, I started really questioning my position on the abortion topic when I met a group of kids, and one kid in particular. I met a kid who it was I remember laying down one night at the camp facility I was volunteering at. I remember laying down thinking to myself, just in all honesty, no misconceptions, no preconceptions. This kid I met today, would his life have ended up? Is his life so ruined that he'd have been better off just not being born, just not existing? And the more and more I thought about it, I realized it's a question I can ask about this kid, but I know for a fact there are hundreds, maybe thousands, possibly millions of kids out there who, not existing would probably have left them in a better place than what they've had to go through. And the odds that their lives are going to improve for the better, that they're going to make any sort of progress, that they're going to find a home and a family, not realistic. And that was the point where I realized, you know what, I'm pro-life because, like I said, for a self-centered reason, because I can't capitulate. This is an internal thing. This is a me thing, of course. but it was like I realized I can't capitulate myself to that sort of pessimism. I can't just wake up in the morning knowing that I finally found some resolution and yep, those kids are just fucked. There's no hope.
Well,
Lucky I'm not them.
that's why, in my opinion, it should be up to the mother to decide. Look, what's the use? I felt this was a valid argument for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
People that are pro-life, they're pro-life until the kid's born. After the kid's born, they don't give a shit about it.
Yep.
He's going to grow up poor. He's going to grow up hungry. He's going to grow up with little education. He's going to grow up with little guidance or whatever. And I'm talking about this is for that specific abortion ask of a woman that says, I cannot financially or emotionally or otherwise provide a good life to this child. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand that adoption is available, and that comes with its own issues. But for the woman that wants to make that choice, to me, the people that say that she should be forced to have that child and take care of that child, she's not gonna. Well, look at it right now. Look at what we have. We have more people. Yeah. How many of them end up in our prison systems? Yeah. How many of them end up with criminal records? And it's not really any fault of theirs. They're just struggling to survive. They have no guidance. They have no raising. You know what I mean? They have no parenting, and they have no resources. And anybody in that circumstance is going to be quite different than the person that does have parents and resources, right? If you don't have resources, you're still going to have to go get them. If you're hungry, you're still going to get food, whether you got to steal it or what. You know, and so then these people are put in these pipelines into prison.
It was a foster care kid that put me in this.
And even worse. And foster care, oh my God, I would never want to be in foster care. Like the horror stories that I heard, I would rather be in a nursing home than foster care. And I don't ever want to be in a nursing home. Ever. Yeah. I'd rather be in a fucking FEMA camp than foster care. And I don't ever want to be in a FEMA camp. So that's kind of my thing, and that's why I say, you know, what right do I have to tell that woman that who had a one night stand, this is her first time ever having an abortion, she's 17, 18 years old, and she says, you know, I've thought about all the options, what's best for me. And I understand that it's selfish for her, but what's best for me is to abort this child. Now, the reason that is because if I don't, then this child and I are going to struggle intensely. And
well, and again, there's that dilemma. Can I actually give this person a life?
Yeah. And look, I don't want to get it. I really didn't want to get into like the particulars of abortion. So I want to kind of jump back to that. There's a spectrum, right? Even on immigration, there's a spectrum. We need some type of immigration. We cannot afford the lawlessness that we're allowing right now.
Well, and that's the point, though. Is like, okay, like you see where I'm coming from. I see where you're coming from. You say, okay, within 2 to 3 months of the pregnancy, that seems like a reasonable cutoff to me. I'm like, you know what? That seems like a very solid position to have. And it's like, that's the point, though.
Is that there's a spectrum, right? And then we find that for our government, right? For our government. Now, our public discourse should be able to go like this, right? These are my opinions. These are my opinions. And then our government says, okay, within the framework of the Constitution, how do we find a middle ground?
And the red-blue partisan government we have right now, they don't stand to benefit from pulling off what we just
That's
did.
why abortion has been an issue for 50 plus years, right? That's why it's continuously a political voting point, right? Because look, they even said on this last election cycle how much the Democrats benefited from the abortion issue, right? Because there are literally people that will vote based on strictly one issue, and abortion is one of those issues that polarizes people staunchly. I respect it, right? But I don't respect that our government continues to kick this can down the fucking road.
Yeah. So
You know?
let's just figure out what game we're playing. The game is they don't stand to benefit if it's not that extreme of an issue.
No.
If it's not that radicalized, if it's not that polarized,
Right.
they
Right.
don't stand to gain anything.
And
That's
so,
the game.
And what are the issues that come up every election cycle? You're going to hear, I've heard abortion all my life. I've heard immigration most of my life. Both of them tend to run with the elections. And there are other issues out there, right? Second Amendment, right? That's one, right? We've got the right to guns and how much that's a part of the
And that's the thing.
the polarizing, right? Because if you're on the blue team, you're anti-gun.
And we
take our guns away, please.
We've been subjected to the argument about illegal immigrants and, well, what's the validity of having illegal immigrants here? What is an illegal immigrant? How does one illegal immigrant?
Well, that's
We've heard that term over and over again. When, if the Republicans, again, if they had a creative bone in their skulls, they'd have come out and said, you know what? Why are we talking about the immigrants writ large? Why aren't we talking about the real issue, which is cartels? Why aren't we talking about South American gangs that have an open gate? Because instead of fixing the immigration process, instead of finding a compromise area, we're just going to spin circles around talking about this and filibustering each other so that there's just a wide open hole.
and
at the
no
South.
stable response. Every Congress, every president, the whole thing changes. How is border patrol supposed to know what they're supposed to be doing when the game's constantly changing?
Yeah,
Like, you don't. That's so bad for the man on the ground, the person on the ground. You know, that officer on the ground.
Yeah, and congratulations. We've spent so much time debating with each other whether or not marijuana is a weed or a flower that now we've had this open hole on our southern border that's allowed all the fucking fentanyl in the world to come through. Great job, guys.
Good job, guys. You know, and I'm glad you brought up marijuana because I'm gonna use it to kind of segue into something else. I can be happy for Brittany Griner being released from.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think anybody should be incarcerated for the use of marijuana. I don't care what country.
I forgot about the crime.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
I forgot about this.
I'm sure it's ironic to me that we use so many resources to secure her liberty when we have people in U.S. Federal and state prisons that are in there for using or being associated with marijuana.
And you know what? I should be ashamed of you. Go ahead.
I think I can be happy for her and still question it, right? That's what, again, free thinkers question everything. The people in the middle, we're free. We're going to think about it. We're not just going to toe the line and be like, oh, my TV told me that Trump is bad.
Yeah.
My TV told me that
like
Biden
that.
is bad.
I don't
You know what I
like
mean?
that
Like
guy.
we're not. We there are free thinkers out here, and I think there are a lot of them in the United States. I don't think we get near the airtime, and I think that's one thing that Twitter is highlighting. But at the same time, and then people will be like, "Oh, you support Brittany Griner, and what about the Marine?" And blah 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 blah. And I'm like, "Look, man, some shit's just above my pay grade, and we got one."
And you know what the thing?
And
yeah.
but at the same time, I can be happy and glad that Kyle Rittenhouse is alive and free today. And then so I've got one team that'll be like, oh my God, you like Brittany Griner and you support it and you like legal marijuana. Oh, you're a blue team. And I'm like, oh, well. And then the blue team's like, oh my God, I can't believe you support the Second Amendment and fucking Kyle Rittenhouse. And they're like, you're on the red team for sure. You know what I mean?
In the Griner situation, is kind of similar to the whole border situation too. Again, it's that whole theater politics because
It
I
is,
should be
it
I should be ashamed of myself that I'm about to make this point, but I can't even remember the guy's name. But we've heard all this debacle. We've had all this polarization about Brittany Griner. Is she a hero? Is she a villain?
I don't
You know
think
what?
she's either.
You know what? She's an American citizen who fucked up
Yeah, she
and
fucked
brought
up.
some shit she shouldn't have
She
to a
definitely-
place she probably had no business being in the first place.
She definitely was. She was definitely pushing the boundaries. She was taking a big risk, and she.
But yeah, I agree. I'm glad that she's here and not there now. With
Yeah.
that being said, that whole situation's been polarized to the point where, like I said, I can't even remember the fucking Marine's name. The Marine who's still sitting in a Russian prison.
I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't even know there was a Marine.
Yeah, he's been there for 4 years. And again, I
didn't
don't even
even know.
remember his name. I haven't heard about the guy.
Didn't even
You haven't
know.
heard shit about the Marine who sat in a Russian prison for 4 years. And then you could make the case. It's like the Biden administration was waiting for the first excuse to send fucking what's-his-nuts, the fucking god of war, the Russian god of war. They fucking sent him back to Russia after all of this hubbubaloo about the Ukraine and how Russia's oppressing the Ukraine and how we all need to stand behind the Ukraine. You're gonna send the fucking Lord of War back to Russia right now because Brittany Griner went and got stoned? It's theater. It's a show.
Well, but part of the reason why did they arrest her and why did the Russians make such a big deal out of her as well, right? This is why I cannot be against Brittany Griner.
No,
Because she
this is not
is
about
caught up in a
Brittany
political. She became a political pawn in a very big political game.
Yeah,
And
that's my point. I'm more upset about Brittany Griner being used as a puppet
Yes, yeah,
than I am
a
about
pawn,
what color the puppet is that she's
Yeah.
been painted.
yeah, and I don't even consider her a puppet. I mean, anyway, I'm mincing
She
words.
is now.
I'm mincing words. But a pawn in the game, right? And she's a pawn in Russians' game, and now she's a pawn in the Democratic game, which probably really doesn't surprise me. She's probably pretty staunchly blue team, seeing that she's African American and a woman. Oh wow, I wish I could delete that. I'm not going to delete that. I would imagine that she was blue team. She's also a lesbian, right? She's married to another woman, so I imagine she's blue team. And I'm not here to judge that. I'm just saying that in today's political climate,
She's
that's
probably
what I imagine
not
that she is.
Milo Yiannopoulos. Very
but-
few people are Milo Yiannopoulos.
But it goes back to the spectrum, right? It's like the spectrum of and how the polarization really benefits some of these people that they argue in politics about topics that we care about, but then they don't really do anything about them. But what do? They come up with really big budgets, and a lot of them get really rich. And so they definitely do things for this kind of like shadow government, World Economic Forum, CIA, organized strategic planning for social engineering and the future of
FBI's
America.
been in Twitter. They've been rigging the game at Twitter. We know this now because Elon Musk finally decided to draw the fucking sword.
Yeah, but that guy that he fired was ex-FBI. I mean, plausible deniability is definitely
disagree.
Yeah. No, but again, plausible deniability, right? And that's
Yeah.
I mean that's
Yeah,
that's the magic of the CIA and the FBI, right? Is in a lot of things. Because to say that a person that used to work for the FBI, everybody that used to work for the FBI is now a plant in whatever organization they're in is, well,
But it
true
wasn't
and
just,
false at the same time.
it wasn't just that. I mean, he was actively
Yeah.
covering shit up.
Well, he was actively vetting the materials before they were released. That's the information I got. But the point that you're making, though, is that these organizations are engineering us, manipulating us, managing us emotionally encouraging us to go after and to use our emotions. That's what I found when I dropped Facebook. I dropped Facebook shortly after Trump got elected because for my feed, it was just emotional pull after emotional pull. For me, in the early days, with the issues of racism, especially as they were highlighted by people like Trayvon Martin and Tamir Rice, who I believe was in Cleveland in my own state. What's the guy in Walmart here locally?
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
So the young man that was killed near Dayton, Ohio, at a Walmart because he had
he had like an airsoft gun. Yeah.
Because some
most egregious
jackass called the police and said he was pointing at people and shit and said it was a real gun. My point is that I was getting so emotionally charged about that and about Trump and some of the things that he was saying and then some of the responses to what he was saying. And it was just like this purely, like every time I logged into Facebook, I felt like I was being emotionally like charged. And we recognize that some of that's their intention, right? People get addicted to certain emotions.
Got tired of taking the bait.
Yeah.
I got tired of getting poked.
But, people get addicted to doping up on their emotions. People, some people love to dope up on sadness and some people love to dope up on anger. And it's very human psychologically. They just because we don't look at it on a spectrum and we don't find compromises and to me we're not making progress. It's just
and that's
this team does this and 4 years later this team does this. That's not progress.
And that's the sorcery, I think, is all of the ways there are to get addicted to something.
Yeah.
All the addictions that the human condition itself is capable of. That's what the sorcerer's planning in your head. Like that's what the sorcerer's feeding off of. That's the power. Is how willing, how complicit are you willing to be in letting somebody else write the JavaScript in your head? How willing are you to just capitulate the script you're running off of to somebody else's HR department? How much of that are you willing to capitulate to Twitter's communications board?
And there are zombies on both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
There are people that are just straight running off a script, and they are zombies. And what's the other sad part is that we don't have family structures to
write any other script for anybody.
Yeah, no. There's so many people that don't. The only script that they have is the one that they've been programmed to have through indoctrination, through our education system, through social media. Yep. And there's no parents at home to counterbalance it. Why? Because both mom and dad, first of all, if they're even together, if they're even together, they're both working.
Yep.
How much energy you got when you come home after a day's of work? You got a lot of energy to play with kids and cook dinner and make sure they got their baths and the tutor homework and you know what I mean? Like, do you really have enough time when both of you are working 50 hours a week?
You have to be an Ubermensch or already pretty fucking affluent, just to raise kids properly.
And even the affluent, like, are they spending more time with their kids, or are they just paying nannies to spend time with their kids?
Well,
you know what I mean? So I pay some young 16, 17, 18-year-old girl to babysit my kids, and that's who's informing their worldview. That's who's
modeling
behavior for them. That's who's telling them who they are. You know, because look, if somebody doesn't tell you who you are, you might figure it out on your own, but this world is going to tell you who you are. This world will tell you who you are, and you can either let it or you can stand strong. But if you don't have a strong family bulwark behind you, it is uncommon, I think, that people are going to find out. Like, you know what I'm saying?
And I keep saying conservatives are impotent right now because they're not creative, but really they're impotent because of that. Like, that's the kind of conservative. That's the little shade on the spectrum where I think conservatism should overlap with common sense. You're gonna either write the script in your kid's head up to the point where they're able to do it themselves. Either you're gonna build individuals with your family. Or somebody else is just going to start sinking those hooks in and they're going to start pulling the strings because your kids, they, those are some young fish taking the bait. Those are some young fish. They don't know what those hooks look like. They don't know the difference between the bait and the live.
And that hook could be social media. It could be a gang. There are a lot of kids that choose gangs for that familial sensation.
Yep.
That group, that sense of belonging, that sense of I know who I am and where I belong, and that I have something that's bigger than me that I'm associated with.
Gender politics
is another one.
That's all over the schools
Yeah.
now. There's not a kid that goes to a public. There's not a kid that gets a public education now that doesn't brush up against gender politics on a daily basis.
Yeah.
What are we doing? Where are we at?
But it goes back to somebody is going, people in psychology, there's the common nature versus nurture. Well, there's some things that everybody's, we're going to have naturally, right? LeBron James is born naturally athletic. Chet is born naturally chubby, or whatever, right? And then there's nurture. And the interaction between nature and nurture, and the modeling, the importance of modeling from both a male and female perspective, the counterbalances that those provide as a child is becoming who they are. I don't think anybody's a blank slate, but I do think that some people are a lot of people. Whether we realize it or not, maybe you don't realize it till you're an adult and you're like, damn, that motion that I made is just like my dad. That facial expression is just like my dad, right? If I have but for those people that don't have that modeling, right, and don't have that open to them, like, and then we wonder why kids are running into schools just blasting on folks. You know what I mean? There's no love. There's no. I feel like that's one of our biggest interests.
There's no framework.
There's no framework. Yeah.
It's just a big Jackson Pollock of red and blue all over the place, and it's like,
yeah.
What's the priority?
Yeah. And
what are our priorities right now?
And are you strong enough to stand on your own, or are you going to just jump into the cool kids club because you don't want to be ostracized, and especially as a young kid. I mean, you're talking about junior high age kids, right? Like, how old were you when you first started thinking about sex? I don't know. I think I was in the 5th grade when I heard about one of my friends fingering a girl. You know what I mean? Like, the sexuality was there. I'm not going to deny that the sexuality is not there.
And again, we can at least meet on the common ground of kids are gonna have sex. Teenagers are gonna have sex.
Mm-hmm.
We don't belong. We don't belong in the conversation about what the kids are doing with each other. We don't belong.
Well, I think parents do.
Well, yeah.
I think parents belong in that conversation.
Yeah.
And I don't think
teachers don't. Maybe a little sex ed, maybe a little fun. Maybe the fundamentals are good to explain to kids, like, hey, this is how you don't get pregnant.
Again, I think this is a good example that there are spectrums, right? And that ultimately that's why we have a country that's supposed to be representative of the people. And so if your people are coming to your school board and they're saying, hey, I don't want you teachers raising my kids and teaching them about their sexuality, I'll do that at home, then that community should have that right to do that. But anyway, I do think it goes down to.
I think it's almost a responsibility.
I think that there's a lot of gray on the spectrum, and if I have a kid that doesn't have supportive parents at home, who else is he going to go to other than a teacher? If he feels comfortable enough with a teacher, then okay. Now, should it be part of the curriculum? I think that's up for debate, right? I think that's up for debate. To me, a young person going through adolescence, I'm sitting in class wearing my sweatpants and Denise walks by and I get a raging hard on for no other reason than I smelled her and she walked by, in her femininity, and here I am in 12, 13 years old, right? Okay, well, that's my signal that I'm heterosexual, right? Because it doesn't just happen with Denise, it happens with the other girls, but hold on.
Yeah.
But for a friend of mine, it doesn't happen when Denise walks by. It happens when Dylan walks by. Dylan walks by with his fucking ripped muscles and his fucking sweaty fucking feet and fucking whatever it is. And here's fucking Jerry over here that gets a fucking raging hard on. I didn't control my hard on at 13 years old. I don't think Jerry's controlling his either.
I hear it.
You know what I mean? And so if Jerry doesn't feel like he can go talk to his bigoted dad or his non-understanding mom, and he wants to go to a teacher, an adult, and express his concerns or express his experience or get help and advice to how to deal, then Jerry should be able to do that. And at the same time, if we're going to talk about sex ed, I do think that there should be some kind of appreciation. And be careful not to put me in the whole BTL blah, blah, blah community, because I think it's for gay people. I think I have a whole different opinion on the spectrum of transsexual. So, but for a gay kid, yeah, I think, mentioning in the sex ed class that, some people are homosexual and some people are, I don't have a problem with that. My point is there's a spectrum. I have my opinion, you have yours. That's where we have to get together as a community and figure out what are we going to do.
The mechanics of sex, yeah, I agree. That just seems pragmatic, that it's like, yeah, we have a health class, every freshman year. Our freshmen get explained the mechanics of sex. You can expand the scope of that to the homosexual experience, to the transgender experience. You can have a conversation about that without handing out butt plugs and dildos to middle schoolers. When I say I think we see some common ground, I think that's where the common ground is.
I definitely think that there are extremities, and my common ground is that should be part of the public discourse, and that is where our government and our representatives are mandated to find the common ground. They're not mandated to, I got voted in, so what I'm doing is the only right thing. No, you are voted in to represent your people, not just the people that voted for you. Yes, you can lean that way in your compromises, for sure. I get that. But at the same time, you're still there for the other 50%, and you can't just railroad people.
And that's
bad karma.
To
man.
our larger,
you're gonna have pushback.
To our broader point here, the politicization, the red and blue politicization, that's part of the reason why there's a big open hole going into the public education system that's wide open for actual groomers and for actual pedophilic individuals to go in and start instructing your kids and weaseling their way into their brains. Again, there's an open hole on the border there, and you're leaving an open hole on the border when you prohibit any sort of firearms on a public school, period. This might be edging more on a kind of my perspective on things, but it's like, frankly, it's like arm your teachers. Let your teachers get their CCP.
Yeah.
Like, let them bring their own guns in.
And again, that's where you are on the spectrum, right? Like, and that's
Yeah.
the point, is you are allowed and free, and I respect your right and your liberty to have those opinions. I may not agree with all of them. I may not disagree with all of them. Number one, that doesn't mean you're not my neighbor. It doesn't mean you're my enemy. Now, I get that there's somebody out there that's like so super antithetical of what you just said that they are you're like, I'm your enemy. I gotta shut Dylan down. He's gonna
Silence.
spread his lies. And hey, you are allowed to have an opposite opinion. You're allowed to work towards that opposite opinion. That's what this is all about.
Like I said, I'm not trying to politicize this conversation.
No, but it goes back to that we have to stop bipolarizing everything and recognize that there is a spectrum. And, to my question of who can do that, like in our government, I don't know. I look at the Tulsi Gabbards, I look at the Cinemas, I look at the Mansions, I look at the Rand Pauls, I look at the kind of centrist kind of Republicans.
And this is kind of where I'm coming at. Again, to keep it to the broader point of this political game.
The red team, blue team shit.
Yeah, the politicization game. This is what's causing most of the problems. To speak to that, I've been saying this for months now. Like, just about all year long, I've been saying this to people. And now it seems like it's kind of coming a little bit to fruition. But what I'm looking at down the road is, I've been saying this, I think there's a big religious revivalism coming down the line. And it's coming real close. And what I think that means, broadly speaking, there's going to be a big conservative swing. I think there's going to be a big cultural conservative movement. And that's coming real soon, real close. I think we're getting real close to George Bush administration levels of like rah patriotism. Yeah, dude, just pass any act you want and I'll get behind it. Let's just go blow up some Arabs. I think we're getting real close to a big conservative swing on the pendulum right now. And what I'm concerned about is I don't want that pendulum to swing off the rails. I want the common ground. I want Twitter to remain an open forum. I want the politicization to stop.
I think if either extreme gets total control, then we're all in trouble.
But I'm saying
that's my opinion.
People have been crying wolf, screaming Nazi, Nazi, Nazi for the last 10, 15 years so much that it's like, dude, you don't realize it. But people are getting radicalized to the point where it's like once or if conservative people finally decide to all band together in some sort of mass movement, that's going to go off the rails in its own way.
I think it is. I think that we've had examples of that. I think Trump was an example of that, honestly.
And I'm the gun-toting pro-life right-winger.
I really do. I really think that Trump was an example of that. I think it's already there. I think that's part of what they call the cultural war, that we're in. And it's sad to me because I really hope that people can wake up and separate reality from the media. And I hope that people can wake up and recognize that being tribal in a political arena has its benefits, but you can easily be manipulated and used. And I want to highlight that these issues of immigration, of social justice, of racism, affirmative action, all these things, all these questions that we have and we continue to argue about. They're political talking points that help them to just walk the to not really deal with it, to give you little tokens like to say, I've honored my commitments for my political campaign, but they're really doing a lot of other shit underneath, and they're using us in that. They use some of us in that regard, and to really think about, like, is it best for society for us to not agree and to never come up with a resolution? Or would it be better for our society to say, okay, I hear you on this end and I hear you on this end, and I hear the five of you in the middle, right? I hear the other five of you along the spectrum. And how can we, as the government representatives, best represent and make something that is not only protective of the individual rights that are protected in the Constitution, but are also healthy and good compromise politically and healthy for our society? And I don't see that. I don't see that in my presidents. I don't see that in my Congress people. And it's really sad to me, because I think we'd be better off.
The degree to which human trafficking has not only just not been stalled, but has exponentially grown and expanded over the last 100 years.
Well, the internet's made it very easy to communicate with those.
It almost makes the abortion debate moot. Because, like I said, the whole dilemma I had about 6 years ago on that very topic was, you know what? I can't deny that, like, there are just some human lives out there. There are some kids walking around barely right now, just finding a way to exist. There's too many of those kids for whom there is no hope. Like, there is only the dark night of the soul for those kids. There's too many of those kids for me to walk around and pretend like this is a clear-cut dilemma, that this is a simple problem with a simple answer. And it's moot compared to human trafficking, child pornography, child exploitation. And you know what? Elon Musk is the only fucking barbarian I've seen who's actually done a goddamn thing about it.
Well, there's been a lot. There are definitely people out there that have been active.
I mean, on his scale, on the political scale.
Yeah,
on the scale of politicizing it.
Are you talking about his recent situation?
I'm talking about just addressing the child exploitation problem on the internet, period.
Yeah, I don't think he realized that was part of what he was purchasing with Twitter until he got there, and then he realized, like, how many predators were pedos or whatever we want to call them.
Well,
we're utilizing that platform to store and transfer and share.
What I'm saying is the fucking FBI had their guys, former or not, their guys were in there in the executive room.
And they're more worried about winning elections than they are actually taking care of
that. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like like I said, like, the abortion topic is almost moot now.
Yeah.
It should be moot.
Well, for the people in the political game, they only care about news and topics that are going to help them with their political game. Apparently, child trafficking and child sexual abuse is not one that helps their political game. And in recent decades, in the recent past, with especially Jeffrey Epstein, we have seen that very top level people are engaged in this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to continue to ask, why is Victoria's Secret not canceled?
Where
Why are we
the-
letting Victoria's Secret groom our fucking little girls when the owner and founder, Les Wexner, was the biggest funder of Jeffrey Epstein?
All the Disney.
Why is that
execs?
not a thing? What is it about the top 5 corporate medias that have squashed that? Like, that's scary to me, bro.
Disney?
That's scary.
Disney's off the fucking rails with that shit.
Yeah.
When was the last time you heard about the Disney executive or the Disney employees, the kids that go missing at fucking Disney World?
I don't know, and I don't want to.
Yeah,
I don't want to jump down that
I'm
rabbit
going
hole
off on a
necessarily. I
tangent.
want to stick to, there are a spectrum of things, and that's one. Honestly, I agree with you. Like, to me, that's an issue that we should be working with because we've already dealt with the abortion issue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's an issue that we should be able to focus on because we've already dealt with the immigration issue. 10 years ago, we should have dealt with the immigration issue. To
gives
me,
a- yeah.
to me, this is where the Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell pissing match on who's got the bigger dick. You know what I mean?
it's
For the
Nancy.
last decade to 20 years.
It's Nancy.
I-
I'm just kidding.
I'm pretty sure you're right. But anyway, she's definitely she's definitely in a cockfight with Mitch McConnell for sure. And has been for years. And I'm like so tired of it, bro. And if they would have taken their heads out of their asses and actually like come together and fucking fix some shit instead of saying, I'm not going to let this president do this and I'm not going to let that president do that.
And yeah,
I'm sorry, but it infuriates me to think about what Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi have done in their bipolarization and their little fucking high school antic pissing match that they've had and what it's done to our country. Like, I don't care what laws you've passed, either one of you, in my opinion, the good that you may think that you have done is for what? Look at us. And this was your Congress. You two go back and forth between majority and minority and who's like, come on, man. No, we should be dealing with this. We should be dealing with internet censorship. We should be able to deal with how we're going to confront AI. We should be able to deal with the struggles and the questions of the future instead of worrying about shit that we've been dealing with for the last 100 years. I mean, come on.
and that's
Or the
all,
last 50 years.
and that's all we're saying right now is, you know what? The problems are so fucking big right now. Nobody gives a shit what side you're on. Nobody cares what team.
Well, actually, there's a lot of people who do. I see it all. They care what side.
Well, they shouldn't.
I agree.
They should stop giving a shit what side somebody's on. Are they trying to fix the problem?
And you know what? You do you, boo-boo. Do you. If your thing is fighting child sexual assault
That's the
and
thing.
exploitation, then do that. You know what I mean? I don't see why anybody would be out in support of child sexual abuse. But, again, somebody is, because somebody's not holding Victoria's Secret to the fire. And I'm going to say that over and over and over. Les Wexham was the biggest funder of Jeffrey Epstein, from what I understand. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. Show me I'm wrong. But until you can show me some details and let us in, hey, when you hide the truth, you're going to get conspiracy theories. That's just the truth. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, dude.
Yeah.
You got anything else?
Nah, that's it. I think that's the gist.
That is the gist. That
You know
is the
what?
gist.
If you give a shit about it, you know what? That's your right. I'll go to my death defending your right to feel that way. But
Ooh, amen.
I'm telling you,
I did. I signed the dotted line. As a veteran, I signed the dotted line that said I am willing to give my life for your freedoms. That's the freedom to step and burn the flag. That's the freedom to bitch to the government. That's the freedom for both sides and both teams. And there's a lot of us that signed on that line. And there's a lot of people that died so that we can have the freedoms that we have today, and to see them given and thrown away because of some in the moment decisions, because you don't realize that the clampdowns that you're putting down on free speech and free thought right now will definitely come back to bite you. In 50 years, it'll be the other side, and it'll be even worse. So, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I'll go love, please, and see you next time.
See you.